If you are a real estate team or brokerage looking to run a YouTube seller campaign or any campaign for that matter, here's how to pick the most profitable market to make sure that you can maximize your ad spend. Now, first and foremost, what's the importance of picking the right market to run YouTube seller campaigns? Well, after spending over $200,000 running YouTube seller and even buyer focused campaigns, I noticed a pattern. We could be running two identical campaigns, right? Same ad scripts, same landing pages, same funnels, same interest targeting, everything is the same, but in two different locations, the results were wildly different, which honestly left me kind of scratching my head a little while because, for example, one of our partners would get a listing signed in under 14 days, another one would maybe take around 45 or 60 days. And so I realized after doing some research and actually going into our data and our backend that the location and more specifically the niche selected from the very beginning created either a tailwind or a headwind impact on the campaign, meaning it either boosted the campaign or it actually made it go worse than expected. The analogy that I kind of came up with here is it's kind of akin to opening up a physical newspaper business versus an online newsletter, right? One of them would be much, much harder to scale, right? The newspaper business, there's so many logistics with printing press and overhead expenses and, all these different things versus a newsletter, which you can just open up on Substack or anywhere on Twitter or X. One of them would be much harder to scale, even if they had the same great content and articles, meaning that when running any campaign, picking the right market is the hidden step one that most marketers, brokerages, and teams don't realize. And if they do, then they're likely using the wrong criteria. And so the overarching theme is that if you pick the wrong market, the downstream effects will actually lead to the wrong campaign and the wrong performance of what you would have expected to. So what's the criteria that we look at when picking a market to run YouTube ad campaigns? Well, firstly, here's what most maybe marketers, agencies, gurus look at is they'll just look at the total available impressions on the ad manager. So on Google and YouTube ads, for example, they'll see that there's 1 million available impressions or 20 million or 100,000. That's basically a metric of how many people are going to be viewing the ad on their feed or on their stream or wherever they're seeing it. Not necessarily how many people are in the area, but how many people are going to be viewing it. How many impressions are we going to be getting on that? And usually they just kind of stop there. But if they're also half decent, they would look at if it's a quote unquote buyer or seller market generally. Here's why this kind of high level basic analysis doesn't really work. Right? Markets and niches are ever changing and dynamic. You know this as a brokerage owner or team lead that seasonality is real in real estate, and especially with macroeconomic conditions, markets can change from being more so buyer focused, seller focused, balanced, and that creates different nuances when deciding which kind of campaign to run. And so when deciding what kind of campaign to run, it's very important to look at these kinds of different changing dynamics. Also, total impressions is not a proxy of how strong or weak a market is to run a particular campaign. We've seen success running campaigns in markets that are very niche and small, under 1 million people, under 1 million impressions, I should say, and they still absolutely crush it because of the factors that we're going to be going over in just a second. Because last point is, there might be a large audience to serve to. You might have 20, 30, 50, 100 million people that you could serve your ads to or impressions wise, but there might not just be enough volume and listings, right? The real estate MLS, data sold to project a certain ROI. And so here's our criteria for choosing the right market to run YouTube seller or buyer ad campaigns. This is what we developed over time. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching, consulting, mentorship as well to really get it down to the point where it's more of an exact science. And so I'm super excited to share this with you. Population size. Ideally, and again, we've actually seen success with campaigns that are under 100,000, even 50,000. But ideally, at a minimum, we want to have at least 100,000 people within the city or the market that we're looking to advertise to at a minimum. Number of active listings. We like to look at least 300 plus active plus listings overall. And in the last 30 days, we want to see at least 100 sales per month minimum. Now, the reason why we want to get all these volume numbers up is because, and I'm going to come back to these points in a second here, is because we're looking at essentially a circle within a circle. And I'm going to actually call this a circle within the circle principle, right? So if we have a large circle of, for example, the total population in the area, you really have to think about how many people in the area are thinking about selling. They're actively searching for things related to selling. So for example, with YouTube ads, it's owned by Google. And so they track people's searches, right? For example, what's my home worth, home evaluation, realtor near me, like this and that. And so we're basically taking a population, we're slicing it up to only filter for the people who are homeowners and looking to potentially sell. And then of course we also have to slice it further because people are going to be seeing the ad on their feed. How many people are on YouTube, which thankfully most of them are going to be on YouTube. But how many people are going to actually not skip the YouTube ad for the first 5 seconds? How many of them are going to watch the ad, click on the link or the landing page, put in their details, become a lead? Again, circles within circles. And that's not to say that there's not enough people who are going to go through that whole funnel process. There definitely is. But the most important thing to remember is that we don't want to, for example, go into a market where there's 20 active listings or 50 active listings, or there's less than 50 active sold per month. Because how many of those are we realistically going to be able to capture by running a YouTube ads campaign? Medium price point, at least 450,000 minimum. Reason being is because with the average cost per acquisition of a YouTube ad seller listing, at the time we're recording this, we're tracking anywhere from about $900 to $2,000 per listing signed. That's dependent on, of course, the price point, market, etc. But again, you want to make sure that whatever GCI you're going to earn from a listing that's signed is actually going to overtake the cost of what you paid for on the ads. Ideally, you want to have a 2x, 3x return on that so that it makes more sense to keep putting more money and investment dollars back into the campaign. And lastly, median days on market. Ideally under 90 days for now sellers. So for example, if you're looking to specifically attract only listings and sellers who are looking to sell within the next 1 to 3 months, then you want to have a median DOM of under 90 days. But the higher the DOM actually can be more advantageous as well, because this would create a long-term lead pipeline, a really good long-term pipeline for you and your team. So again, this comes with a caveat, you could say, where if you want the now business, you want the now listings, then optimize for the lowest DOM. But if you are more long-term thinking, which ideally most of the partners and brokerages that we bring on are focused on that, then anything under 190 days is going to be all okay. That is it for this video. If you are a brokerage or a team looking to scale using the power of YouTube ads with you and your agents, click the first link in the description. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.